What happens when a man you love belongs to another woman? Would you fight for him with everything you have, or would you walk away before he breaks you completely? Hi guys, welcome to Best Romance Stories. Please like, comment, and subscribe to help the channel grow. Jane never thought she would be the kind of woman who would beg for love, but that was before Jasper walked into her life. It started quietly, with a smile, with a little kindness here and there, with the kind of charm that lingers long after he leaves the room. She told herself it was harmless, that her feelings were just admiration. But admiration turned to longing, and longing grew into an obsession she could no longer hide. That was why, one evening, she found herself seated across from her closest friend Sawyer, her fingers tracing the rim of her glass as though the answers to her broken heart were etched into the cup. For weeks, she had carried this secret alone, but secrets are heavy, and hers was beginning to suffocate her. So she spoke, her voice trembling with both fear and hope. "I love him, Sawyer. I love Jasper." The words hung in the air like forbidden fruit, and Sawyer's reaction came quickly, sharp and full of concern. "Jane," she whispered, her brows furrowing, "don't tell me you've gone and given your heart to that man. You know he doesn't see you the way you see him." But Jane leaned back, clutching the glass tighter, as if holding on to her confession would keep her from crumbling. "I can make him see me. I just need to prove myself, to show him I'm not like the others. I believe if I stay by his side, if I help him, he'll realize I'm the one." Sawyer's sigh was heavy, the kind of sigh that comes from knowing the truth but being unable to force someone else to accept it. Love should never be begged for, Jane. If a man can't choose you freely, then he doesn't deserve you. But Jane shook her head. In her heart, she believed love wasn't only about choice, it was about effort, sacrifice, and persistence. She believed a woman could win a man's heart if she was willing to give more than anyone else ever had. That belief was what drove her, what fueled the fire in her chest every time she saw Jasper smile at Ariel, the woman everyone knew was his true love. Ariel was beautiful in ways Jane couldn't compete with. Confident, graceful, the kind of woman who didn't have to beg for affection because it followed her naturally. And Jasper's eyes always softened when they landed on Ariel. Still, Jane clung to her hope. She told herself that Jasper just needed time, that maybe Ariel was only temporary, that maybe he was waiting for someone like her to prove she was worth the risk. Sawyer watched her friend, her heart aching at Jane's determination. She wanted to shake her, to tell her the pain waiting down that road was too much for any woman to carry. But she knew Jane, and she knew once her mind was made up, not even fire could change it. So Sawyer tried again, her voice gentle but firm. "Jane, listen to me. You can't buy love. You can't beg a man into loving you. Jasper will take what he wants, and he'll leave you broken. Please don't go down this path." Jane smiled faintly, though it didn't reach her eyes. "I hear you, Sawyer. But you don't understand. This is different. He's different, and I'll do whatever it takes." Her voice cracked on the last words, but her determination didn't waver. Deep inside, a small voice whispered that Sawyer might be right, that chasing Jasper could only end in heartbreak. But Jane smothered that voice quickly, replacing it with the dream of a future where Jasper would look at her the way he looked at Ariel, where he would finally see that no one else could love him like she did. Outside, the evening stretched on, quiet and calm, but inside Jane's heart was a storm. She was willing to pour herself out, willing to lose pieces of her soul, if it meant Jasper would one day call her his. And Sawyer, staring at her friend's hopeful but fragile smile, knew that storm was only just beginning. They say the heart never lies, that no matter how far you try to stretch it, it will always return to where it truly belongs. For Jasper, his heart had always belonged to Ariel. When he looked at her, his eyes softened, his laughter deepened, and his silence felt like comfort. He didn't need to pretend with Ariel. With her, he was free, whole, and at peace. But with Jane, everything was different. He wore a mask. He knew how much she adored him, how quickly she responded to his calls, how desperately she wanted to be chosen. And while he never promised her love, he never refused her help either. Jane was useful, a safety net for the things Ariel didn't need to know about. He could call her when bills were piling up, when a contract was slipping away, when his pockets felt lighter than his dreams. And Jane, with her eager heart, never said no. Each time she helped him, her hope grew, convincing her that this was proof he needed her. To her, it was love in disguise. To him, it was convenience. That evening, Jasper left Jane's apartment after receiving another envelope of money, his expression unreadable. Jane had handed it over with trembling hands, whispering, "I know this will help you, Jasper. One day you'll see how much I believe in you." He kissed her cheek lightly, a gesture empty of passion but enough to keep her soul burning for more. The moment he stepped outside, his phone lit up with Ariel's name, and his entire face transformed. His voice softened as he answered, "I'm on my way, love." Within minutes, he was at Ariel's door, carrying the weight of Jane's sacrifice into the arms of the woman who never asked him for a thing. Ariel greeted him with a smile that lit up the room. She had no idea how he was sustaining the lifestyle he spoiled her with, and she never asked. All she knew was that Jasper made her feel cherished, safe, and adored. That night he held her close, whispering promises of forever, while Jane lay awake alone, clutching her phone, waiting for a message that would never come. Across the city, Sawyer tossed in her bed, her mind restless. She knew Jane had given Jasper money again, and she feared the pattern was sinking too deep. Sawyer's instinct screamed that Jasper's love for Ariel was unshakable. But how could she make Jane see what she refused to believe? The suspense of it all grew heavier. Jane convinced herself Jasper was only taking time to prepare. Sawyer worried her friend was losing herself, and Jasper lived a double life that was bound to collapse. But the twist, the cruel truth, was that Jasper's heart never once hesitated. Every time he touched Ariel's face, every time he kissed her lips, he knew there was no competition. Jane could give him her world, her money, her future, but none of it could move his heart away from Ariel. And yet, he continued to take from Jane because convenience is a dangerous addiction, and Jasper had no intention of letting go. The days slipped into weeks, and Jane's hope only grew stronger. Every time Jasper called her, her heart leapt with joy. He never called to ask how she was, never called to whisper sweet nothings, never called to say he missed her. No, his calls came with weight, with needs, with requests. "Jane, I need a little help. Just for now." Those words became her lullaby. And every time she answered with her savings, her contacts, her sacrifices, she told herself this was love in motion. He needed her, and one day he would see that no one else stood by him the way she did. Jane convinced herself that Ariel was only a passing shadow, a temporary comfort until Jasper was ready to settle. But in truth, Ariel was his sunrise, the light he woke up to, the peace he returned to when the world grew heavy. With Ariel, Jasper was a different man. His laughter was unrestrained, his eyes alive with devotion. He would hold her hand in public, whisper her name in private, and leave trails of affection wherever they went. He never had to beg her for anything. Ariel never needed to buy his loyalty. She had what Jane could never purchase, his heart. Still, Jane's blindness only deepened. When Sawyer confronted her one evening, her words cut with frustration. "Jane, don't you see? He doesn't love you. He uses you. Every time you pick up his calls, you're emptying yourself for a man who will never fill you back." But Jane shook her head, clutching the tiny trinket Jasper had given her once, a small necklace she wore like a badge of honor. "You're wrong, Sawyer. He just needs time. When his business takes off, when things are stable, he'll choose me. I've been there for him when no one else was." Sawyer's silence was louder than her words. She could see her friend slipping deeper into a dream that would soon turn nightmare, but there was nothing more she could say. And as Jane walked away, Sawyer whispered a silent prayer for her heart. Across town, Jasper was living his double life with ease. He took Jane's money, shook her hand with gratitude, and then used those same funds to buy flowers for Ariel, to plan dinners, to whisper sweet promises. Each time Ariel smiled at him, he felt justified. This is where I belong, he thought. This is love. Yet behind the sweetness lay a growing tension. Leonard, Jasper's closest friend, noticed the pattern. He watched Jasper collect from Jane only to spoil Ariel, and the weight of it unsettled him. One night, Leonard pulled Jasper aside. "You can't keep this up," he warned. "Jane believes you'll choose her. You're bleeding her dry." But Jasper only smirked, brushing the concern away. "She knows where she stands. She's not forced. Besides, Ariel is the one I love. Jane just helps me get there." Leonard's chest tightened at the casual cruelty in Jasper's words, but he said nothing more. He knew Jasper's mind was fixed, and so the double life continued, a twisted dance of sacrifice and affection, of blind devotion and true love. Jane believed she was winning his heart piece by piece, but in reality, every piece she gave away only fueled his romance with Ariel. The suspense grew heavy around them, invisible but suffocating, for everyone could see where this story was heading. Everyone but Jane. They say love has a way of making everything look brighter, as though the world itself bows in respect to its beauty. And for Ariel, every day with Jasper felt like proof that she had been chosen by fate. She didn't have to ask for his attention. She didn't have to beg for his affection. It was in the way he looked at her, the way his hand naturally found hers in crowded streets, the way his voice softened when he spoke her name. Ariel never doubted him. She believed every smile, every kiss, every whispered promise of a future filled with children, laughter, and quiet evenings together. Her glow came from the certainty of love that never needed to be earned, and Jasper fed that certainty every single day. He took her out to dinners, holding the door open like a gentleman, watching her laugh as though she were the only woman in the room. He left little notes by her bedside, words scribbled hastily yet dripping with sincerity. "You're my home, Ariel." When she leaned her head against his shoulder, he pressed his lips against her hair and breathed her in as though she was the air itself. Ariel didn't know where the money for all of this came from, but she never thought to ask. Jasper worked hard. She thought he was building a future, and she was simply the lucky woman walking beside him as he did. What she didn't know was that every bouquet of roses, every sparkling dinner, every thoughtful gesture was painted with Jane's sacrifices. Jane, who sat alone at night, waiting for a message that never came, replaying every moment Jasper had smiled at her as though it was proof of a love he hadn't yet voiced. Jane, who answered his calls at midnight when he claimed he was short on cash, who wired money she didn't have, who believed with all her heart that loyalty was enough to make a man fall. But Ariel was the one who wore his love like a crown, and Jane was the one who carried his burdens like chains. The contrast grew sharper with each passing week. At work, Jane's colleagues noticed the exhaustion on her face, the way her shoulders slumped, the way she smiled less. Sawyer tried to pull her out of it again, tried to warn her, but Jane's stubbornness was ironclad. "I know what I'm doing," she insisted, clutching her phone tightly. "He just needs me right now. When his business takes off, he'll never forget who was there for him. Ariel may have his attention now, but I have his foundation." Sawyer shook her head in disbelief, unable to comprehend how her friend could be so blind. "Jane, you're pouring water into a basket. He's not keeping any of what you're giving him. It all flows to Ariel. Can't you see?" But Jane couldn't see, or rather, she refused to. In her mind, love was a battle she could win with endurance. If Ariel had beauty, then Jane would have persistence. If Ariel had his affection, then Jane would have his success. The night only deepened the divide. While Jane sat awake, staring at her ceiling, Jasper was stretched out on Ariel's couch, his arms wrapped securely around her waist. He whispered in her ear, his voice filled with warmth. "One day, I'll give you the world, Ariel. You're the only one who makes me believe I can do it." Ariel smiled, pressing her forehead against his, her trust unshakable. Leonard saw the danger growing, but he held his tongue. He knew Jasper's heart was buried so deep in Ariel that nothing Jane did would ever uproot it. Yet he also knew that Jane's devotion had become a weapon she was turning against herself. And still, Jasper allowed it, careless of the wreckage it would leave behind. Ariel's glow grew brighter with every gesture, every promise, every moment drenched in love. And Jane's shadow grew darker, her soul draining slowly, her hope tightening like a noose around her neck. She told herself she was winning, but the truth was clear to everyone else. Jasper's heart had already chosen, and it had never been hers. The suspense lingered in the air, the kind that makes you hold your breath because you know a fall is coming, and when it comes, it will shatter everything. Jane's friends whispered about her. Albert grew restless watching her waste herself. Sawyer prayed nightly for her deliverance, and even Leonard's conscience began to itch. But Jane's determination was unshaken, blind to the cracks widening beneath her feet. And as Ariel lay asleep in Jasper's arms, glowing with the kind of peace only true love gives, Jane stayed awake in silence, still believing that tomorrow would be the day he would finally see her. They say when you're blinded by love, the voices of reason sound like enemies. But Jane's world was already filled with voices, louder now, each one pulling at her heart in a different direction. Albert, her cousin, came first. He sat across from her one evening, his jaw tight, his tone sharper than he intended. "Jane, this man is using you. Don't you see it? Every contract, every deal, every coin you've scraped together for him goes straight into his pocket. And what do you get in return? Nothing. Not even respect." Jane's chest tightened, but she forced a smile, the kind of smile meant to shield her from the truth. "You don't understand, Albert. Love is sacrifice. You don't just walk away because it's hard. He's trying. He just needs help, and when it all works out, he'll remember who was there." Albert leaned closer, lowering his voice. "No, Jane. When it works out, he'll remember Ariel, because that's where his heart is. You're not building a future with him. You're funding the one he's giving to her." The words stung like fire, but Jane brushed them aside, whispering that Albert was being too harsh. Yet even after he left, his warning echoed in her head. Sawyer wasn't gentler either. She caught Jane at work, pulled her aside in the hallway. "You're begging for crumbs, Jane. Love isn't supposed to feel like starvation. It's supposed to fill you, not drain you." But Jane snapped this time, her patience worn thin. "You think I don't know what I'm doing? You think I'm a fool? Sawyer, I'm not giving up. People don't understand love the way I do. If I stop now, then all my efforts will mean nothing." Sawyer sighed, shaking her head as though watching a friend walk willingly into fire. "Effort doesn't buy love, Jane. It never has. It never will." Yet Jane hardened her heart, convinced she was right. The more people tried to pull her back, the more determined she became to prove them wrong. She began to see herself as a soldier, fighting a lonely battle that everyone else was too weak to understand. But outside of Jane's stubborn silence, the truth was becoming clearer. Lawrence, Ariel's protective brother, had started to notice the way Jasper always had money at the right time, money that didn't quite align with the work he claimed to be doing. He asked questions, subtle ones, when Jasper came over. "So, that new contract, how'd you land it?" Jasper deflected smoothly, his charm polished. "Hard work, connections, you know how it goes." But Lawrence's suspicion lingered. He watched his sister beam every time Jasper walked through the door, watched the way her world seemed to orbit around him, and it made his stomach twist. He loved Ariel too much to let her heart be shattered by a man who was clearly hiding something. Leonard, Jasper's closest friend, felt the same unease. He knew more than Lawrence, knew exactly where Jasper's late-night calls went, knew who wired him money when his pockets ran dry. He wanted to confront him, wanted to tell Jasper to stop bleeding Jane dry, but each time he tried, Jasper silenced him with a look, a reminder of loyalty, of brotherhood. "Don't you dare betray me, Leonard. You know where my heart is." Jane made her choice. I never forced her. Leonard's guilt grew heavier with each passing day. He saw Jane fading, saw Ariel glowing, and knew the contrast was being written with lies. And yet he said nothing. The tension thickened like a storm about to break. Everywhere Jane went, advice followed her, warnings shadowed her steps, but she built walls around her heart, convinced that persistence was the price of true love. She told herself that history was filled with women who fought for men until they won them, that her story would not be different. She ignored Albert's frustration, Sawyer's tears, Leonard's silence, even Lawrence's cold stares. She kept giving, kept pushing, kept pouring until there was nothing left to pour. And still, Jasper went home to Ariel, holding her close, whispering his love as though no other woman existed. He told her stories of their future, of the house they would build, of the laughter of children echoing through their halls. Ariel listened with her whole heart, never doubting him for a second. She believed because his love was steady, unshaken by storms, and because she didn't know about the sacrifices that paved her joy. She didn't know that Jane was sitting in her apartment, staring at her phone, waiting for a single text that never came. She didn't know that Jane was defending Jasper to everyone who loved her, insisting that one day he would see her worth. She didn't know that Jane was drowning, and Jasper was the one pressing her head underwater. The suspense thickened, the kind that makes the air too heavy to breathe, because everyone around Jane knew the truth but her. And everyone around Jasper knew his double life could not last forever. Lawrence was watching, Leonard was wavering. Albert was losing his patience, Sawyer was losing her hope. And Jane, poor Jane, was losing herself. They say desperation makes a person blind, but Jane believed her vision was clearer than anyone else's. She told herself she could see what others could not, that she understood Jasper in a way no one else did. Everyone around her had turned their voices into a chorus of warning, but she silenced them with stubborn faith. If anything, the more they doubted, the more determined she became to prove them wrong. When Oakes, the wealthy businessman, brought a contract opportunity to the table, Jane threw herself into it as though it were her destiny. She rearranged her savings, borrowed money from people who trusted her word, and negotiated terms late into the night, all for Jasper. She told herself that this was the chance that would change everything. If he sees what I can bring him, she whispered in the dark to no one but herself, he will have no choice but to realize my worth. Her chest swelled with hope as she handed the signed papers to Jasper, her smile trembling with pride. But Jasper only glanced at them, nodding in appreciation without truly seeing the sacrifice behind her tired eyes. You really came through for me, Jane, he said smoothly, slipping the documents into his bag. This is going to help me a lot. Jane clung to the words, replayed them in her mind long after he left, twisting them into a confession of love that never truly existed. Yet what she didn't see was where Jasper went after their meeting. He didn't rush home to celebrate with her, didn't sit her down and share his excitement. Instead, he walked straight into Ariel's apartment, holding her tightly as he told her of the opportunity ahead. It's happening, Ariel, he whispered against her hair, his eyes shining with dreams. Everything we talked about, it's finally becoming real. I can give you the life you deserve. Ariel's face lit up like the sunrise. She believed in him so deeply that she never questioned the source of his blessings. Her joy was pure, untainted by suspicion, because love had never taught her to doubt. Leonard sat in the corner of his room that night, his conscience tearing him apart. He had watched Jane hand Jasper everything, and he had watched Jasper hand it all to Ariel. His loyalty to Jasper felt like betrayal to humanity itself, yet his silence caged him. He poured himself another drink, hoping it would drown the guilt, but it only made the weight heavier. Lawrence, meanwhile, had begun to piece the puzzle together. He didn't have evidence, not yet, but his instinct screamed that something was off. Every time Jasper spoke of his new opportunities, Lawrence noticed how vague the details were, how conveniently his timing aligned with Jane's visible exhaustion. He decided to dig deeper, not for himself, but for Ariel. He couldn't stand the thought of his sister's heart being broken by a man who wore loyalty like a mask. Jane, in her own world, was unraveling slowly. Her colleagues noticed the strain, her health faltered, her smiles grew forced, but she dismissed every concern. She told Sawyer over coffee that she was fine, that she was simply tired, that everything was worth it. Love requires proof, she insisted, her eyes gleaming with stubborn fire. You don't just wait to be chosen. You make yourself unforgettable. Sawyer's heart broke at the words, but she no longer argued. She knew nothing could pierce the armor of Jane's obsession. All she could do was pray that the truth would reveal itself before it destroyed her completely. But fate has a cruel way of exposing what people try hardest to hide. On the night of Jasper's first big celebration, the one funded by Jane's sacrifices, the lines of his double life blurred dangerously. Jane arrived at the venue early, clutching her invitation like it was a ticket to a dream. She dressed with care, hoping tonight would be the night Jasper finally introduced her not as a shadow, but as his partner. She rehearsed her smile, her greetings, her patience. But across town, Ariel was getting ready too, humming softly as Jasper helped zip her dress, his lips brushing against her bare shoulder with affection that couldn't be faked. "Tonight is for us," he whispered, and Ariel believed him with all her heart. The stage was set, the crowd gathered, the music swelled. And somewhere in the glittering room, two women unknowingly circled the same man, both believing he belonged to them, both unaware of the storm that was about to break. Suspense hung in the air like a thread pulled too tight, threatening to snap with one wrong move. Jane's eyes searched the crowd for Jasper, her heart racing with anticipation. Ariel's laughter filled the space as she held his hand, oblivious to the shadow approaching. And Jasper, caught between his lies and his truths, felt the walls of his carefully built world begin to close in. Jane's heart had rehearsed this moment 1,000 times, but the reality of it struck her like a blade she hadn't seen coming. She stood frozen at the edge of the celebration, her breath caught in her throat as her eyes found Jasper. Not alone, not with business partners, not with strangers she could ignore, but with Ariel. His hand rested securely on Ariel's back, his lips close enough to her ear to make the crowd disappear, his smile wide with the kind of joy Jane had begged for in silence. For a moment, the world around Jane dimmed. The music faded into an echo, the laughter into a blur. All she could hear was the thundering of her heart as the truth crystallized before her. Jasper's home was with Ariel, not with her. Ariel leaned into him effortlessly, her face glowing with the peace of a woman who never had to ask to be loved. Jasper's eyes softened in a way Jane had never seen when they looked at her. And in that single gaze, Jane realized what everyone else had been trying to tell her. She had been loving him alone. Yet even as the sting of betrayal seared through her, another voice inside her rose louder. "Don't give up. Not now. Not when you've given him everything." The lie wrapped itself around her pain, dulling it just enough to keep her rooted to the spot. Sawyer had followed her into the room, and from a distance, she saw Jane's face pale, saw her body stiffen. Her stomach dropped. She knew Jane had finally seen what she had been blind to all along, but she also knew this wouldn't be the end. Jane wasn't the kind to walk away. Not yet. Jane forced herself to move, weaving through the crowd until she was close enough to catch Jasper's attention. His eyes flickered with surprise, then panic, then calculation. Ariel turned, her expression lighting up politely, unaware of the storm brewing in the spaces between them. "Jane," Jasper said, his voice a little too tight. "I didn't expect you here." Jane's lips trembled, but she forced them into a smile, the kind that masked desperation with fragile dignity. "You invited me," she whispered, though she realized he hadn't. It didn't matter. What mattered was that she was standing here now, part of his world, unwilling to be erased. Ariel excused herself for a moment to greet someone across the room, leaving Jane and Jasper in a tense silence. Her voice cracked as she spoke again. "Is she the reason? Is this why you keep me hidden?" Jasper's jaw tightened. He glanced around, his image-conscious mind desperate to keep the moment contained. "Not here, Jane. We'll talk later." But Jane shook her head, her eyes glistening. "No, Jasper. I need to know. I've given you everything. I've emptied myself for you. Why isn't it enough?" His words came like a blade, cloaked in calm. "Because my heart doesn't belong to you, Jane. It never did." The confession was low, firm, meant only for her, but it struck louder than any shout. Her chest caved in, but her pride refused to let her crumble. She laughed softly, though it trembled at the edges. "Hearts can change, Jasper. I'll make you see that." He didn't answer. He simply walked away, back to Ariel, leaving Jane standing in the crowd with her resolve fractured but not broken. Sawyer rushed to her side, gripping her arm tightly. "You saw it yourself, Jane. Please, don't sink deeper. He's told you the truth." But Jane's eyes burned with defiance. "No, this isn't the end. He owes me more than this. After everything I've done for him, he can't just walk away." Sawyer's mouth opened, then closed. She knew Jane's desperation had mutated into something unrecognizable. This wasn't love anymore. It was a hunger that would consume her if she didn't let go. Yet Jane couldn't let go. That night, she returned home, her mind replaying Jasper's words on an endless loop. It never did. It never did. The pain was unbearable, but so was the thought of surrender. She convinced herself that Ariel was temporary, that Jasper was simply confused, that persistence would eventually bend his heart. In the quiet of her room, she wept in her pillow, but between sobs she whispered vows to herself. "I won't stop. He'll see. One day he'll see." The suspense grew heavier. Leonard, who had been watching from across the hall that night, knew the walls were closing in. He knew Jane's desperation was pushing her toward collapse, and Jasper's lies were running out of space to breathe. Lawrence, too, had seen the exchange, and though he couldn't hear the words, the tension in Jane's eyes and Jasper's stiffness told him everything he needed to know. He vowed silently that he would protect Ariel at any cost, even if it meant tearing Jasper's mask off himself. And in the middle of it all, Jasper held Ariel tighter, whispering promises with the same lips that had just wounded Jane beyond repair. The triangle had finally revealed itself, and though Jane had seen the truth with her own eyes, she chose not to escape it. She chose to dig her heels deeper into a love that had already broken her, convinced that the story wasn't over yet. They say a heart in denial is more dangerous than one that has been broken, because denial builds illusions that nothing can shatter until the whole world comes crashing down. Jane woke the next morning with swollen eyes and trembling hands, but instead of stepping back, she doubled down. She looked at her reflection in the mirror and whispered to herself, "He doesn't mean it. He's confused. He's scared. But he needs me, and I won't let him go." She painted her lips, combed her hair, and disguised her pain with determination. Sawyer had spent half the night texting her, pleading for her to wake up, but Jane left the messages unanswered. Albert had called 3 times, his voice full of frustration on her voicemail, but she ignored that too. To Jane, their words were noise, distractions from the battle she believed she was destined to win. Her spiral began with money. She had already given Jasper more than she could afford, but she convinced herself this was the moment to go all in. She emptied what was left of her savings, pawned a family heirloom her mother had left behind, and even took a quiet loan from her office cooperative. Every coin, every note, every sacrifice went straight into Jasper's hands, hidden behind business deals and projects that he promised would bloom into success. "Just a little more patience," he told her, his voice dripping with smooth persuasion. "Once this is done, Jane, things will change." She clung to those words like scripture, twisting them into a promise of love, even though Jasper never mentioned love at all. And where did Jasper go? Straight to Ariel, showering her with gifts she thought he had worked hard to earn. A necklace gleamed around her neck, dinners grew grander, and his arms never left her side. Ariel glowed brighter with every passing day, blissfully unaware that another woman was bleeding in silence to fund her happiness. Lawrence's suspicion hardened into conviction. He had watched Jane's face at the celebration, seen the way she looked at Jasper, seen the silent war in her eyes. He began to dig quietly, asking questions about Jane, asking questions about the contracts, piecing together a truth that Ariel refused to see. "You're imagining things," Ariel told him when he voiced his concerns. "Jasper loves me. Don't let your protectiveness turn into paranoia." But Lawrence couldn't shake the unease. He promised himself he would find evidence, proof so clear even Ariel couldn't deny it. Meanwhile, Leonard's guilt was eating him alive. He had always been Jasper's loyal friend, but he could no longer bear watching Jane's life drain into a love that was never hers. He watched her walk past him one evening, her shoulders hunched, her eyes hollow, and something inside him cracked. "You don't deserve this," he muttered under his breath, but Jane didn't hear him. She was too far gone, her mind consumed with Jasper, her soul shackled to hope. The spiral didn't stop with money. Jane began to twist her own morals to suit the dream she was chasing. She covered for Jasper at work, lied to colleagues about his failures, bent rules to help him secure meetings. She told herself she was building his empire, but really, she was building her own prison. Each step deeper cost her a piece of herself, and yet she smiled when she handed Jasper the results. "See how much I believe in you," she whispered one night, her voice trembling. Jasper avoided her gaze, guilt flickering across his face for a fleeting second before he buried it beneath charm. "You've been incredible, Jane. I couldn't have done this without you." But when her phone stayed silent the next night, she knew exactly where he was, lying in Ariel's arms, promising her forever. Sawyer broke down in tears the next time they met. "You're killing yourself, Jane. Don't you see? You're becoming a shadow. He doesn't see you. He doesn't even try to." Jane grabbed her hand, desperate, her eyes feverish. "He will. One day soon, he'll realize I'm the one who stayed, the one who sacrificed. He'll leave her, Sawyer. I just have to keep holding on." Sawyer pulled her hand back, shaking her head in despair. "You're not holding on, Jane. You're falling. And when you hit the ground, no one will be able to catch you." But Jane refused to hear it. She was deaf to everything but the sound of her own desperate heartbeat, whispering Jasper's name. The suspense grew unbearable. Everyone could see the cracks widening. Leonard's guilt, Lawrence's determination, Sawyer's helpless tears, Albert's mounting anger. Everyone but Jane. And in the middle of it all, Jasper continued his dangerous dance, clinging to Ariel with genuine love, while keeping Jane as his hidden lifeline. He told himself he wasn't cruel, that Jane chose this path, that he had never forced her. But deep down, he knew he was feeding a flame that would one day consume them all. And Jane, poor Jane, couldn't see that she was already burning. They say the truth always finds its way to the surface, no matter how deep you bury it. And by the time Jane's spiral reached its breaking point, the lies Jasper had built around himself were cracking. Jane had grown reckless in her devotion, chasing Jasper with a desperation that no longer looked like love, but obsession. She called him more often, texted him at all hours, waited outside meetings just to see his face. She convinced herself it was persistence, but to everyone else, it looked like a woman losing her grip. Ariel began to notice the shadows, too. At first, it was small things. Jasper's distracted look when his phone buzzed, the excuses that didn't quite add up, the odd tension in his voice when she asked about work. She brushed them aside, trusting him more than she trusted her doubts. But Lawrence was relentless. He had dug deeper, found whispers of Jane's involvement in Jasper's contracts, and he brought it to Ariel like a weapon. "You need to open your eyes," he said, slamming down copies of agreements Jane had helped secure. "This woman isn't just a stranger. She's funding him. She's entangled in his business. And you're sitting here thinking he built this all by himself." Ariel's face drained of color. She shook her head furiously, refusing to let the words stick. "No, you don't know Jasper like I do. He loves me. He would never." But Lawrence cut her off, his voice sharp. "Love doesn't erase evidence, Ariel. You're blinded by it. But I won't stand by while he destroys you." Ariel's hands trembled as she shoved the papers back at him. "Stop it, Lawrence. I won't let your paranoia ruin the man I love." She stormed out, but the seed of doubt had been planted. Jane, on the other hand, had already begun to confuse her pain with purpose. Every time Jasper pulled away, she leaned closer, as though smothering him with her devotion would keep him from slipping through her fingers. One evening, she waited by his car after a long meeting. When he stepped out, his eyes widened at the sight of her, exhaustion written across his face. "Jane, what are you doing here?" She smiled nervously, holding out a small box. "I wanted to surprise you. I bought this for you. Just something to remind you that I believe in you." He took the box reluctantly, opening it to reveal an expensive watch she couldn't afford. His stomach twisted, not with gratitude, but with guilt. He muttered thanks, kissed her forehead quickly, and hurried away, driving straight to Ariel's apartment. Later that night, Jane sat on her couch, waiting for a message, anything to show he had appreciated her gift. Her phone remained silent. She told herself he was busy, but in truth, he was lying on Ariel's bed, his arms around the woman he truly loved, whispering that she was his only one. Leonard couldn't take it anymore. He cornered Jasper one night after seeing Jane sitting alone outside the office, waiting in vain. "You're playing with fire, Jasper. You're killing her, and you're lying to Ariel. How long do you think you can keep this up before it all collapses?" Jasper's jaw tightened. "Jane made her choice, Leonard. I never promised her anything. She knows where my heart is." Leonard's voice cracked with anger. "No, Jasper. You're letting her believe in something that isn't real because it benefits you. That's not her choice. That's your manipulation." For the first time, Jasper didn't have a smooth answer. He turned away, guilt gnawing at him, but his pride refused to let him admit it. Meanwhile, Jane's behavior began to attract whispers. Colleagues muttered about her, friends avoided the subject, but Albert confronted her directly. He stormed into her apartment one evening, his frustration boiling over. "Jane, enough is enough. Look at you. You're broke, you're exhausted. And for what? For a man who doesn't love you? A man who parades another woman around while you sit here, waiting like a fool." Jane's eyes filled with tears, but her voice was steady, almost frightening. "He just needs time, Albert. Love takes time." Albert shook his head, his chest heaving. "This isn't love. This is self-destruction. And if you don't stop, there will be nothing left of you to save." But Jane closed the door on him, shutting herself inside with her illusions. The suspense twisted tighter. Ariel's doubts grew. Jane's sacrifices deepened. Jasper's lies pressed harder against the walls of reality. And then, one night, the worlds collided again. Ariel stumbled upon messages on Jasper's phone. Messages from Jane that were too intimate, too desperate to ignore. Her stomach churned as she read them, her hands trembling with a mix of anger and fear. When Jasper returned, she held the phone up, her voice shaking. "Who is she to you, Jasper? Don't lie to me. Not this time." Jasper's mask slipped for the first time. His charm faltered, his excuses tangled. Ariel's eyes filled with tears as she whispered, "All this time, was I living in someone else's shadow?" Jasper reached for her, desperate, but she pulled away. Lawrence's voice echoed in her head. Leonard's warnings rang true, and Jane's name burned into her thoughts. Somewhere across town, Jane sat by her window, clutching her phone, waiting for a call that never came, unaware that the storm she had fueled was finally breaking. They say love is blind, but what no one tells you is that blindness eventually fades, and when it does, the light can burn. The night Ariel confronted Jasper, silence filled the room like smoke, suffocating both of them. She held out his phone, her trembling fingers scrolling through Jane's desperate messages. Words of devotion, promises, gifts that were too costly to ignore. Jasper's lips parted, searching for lies, for charm, for something that could erase the truth in her eyes, but nothing came. Ariel's voice broke as she asked the question that had been clawing at her heart. "How could you take everything from her, Jasper, and still come here and tell me I was your only one?" Jasper's chest rose and fell, his pride fighting against the guilt crushing him. "Ariel, you don't understand. Jane, she offered things, opportunities, doors I couldn't open on my own. But you're the one I love. You're the one I come home to." His words sounded weak, hollow, a desperate man trying to stitch together a love unraveling in his hands. Ariel's tears fell freely now, each one heavier than the last. Love built on lies is no love at all. She turned away from him, her body trembling, and for the first time, Jasper felt the true weight of losing her. Not a threat, not a possibility, but a reality slipping through his fingers. Meanwhile, across the city, Jane sat in darkness, her heart heavy yet restless. She had sacrificed everything, her savings, her reputation, her pride, only to realize she had become invisible in Jasper's life. The watch she had bought him, the contract she had helped secure, the nights she had waited, all of it had vanished into the shadow of his love for Ariel. And yet, deep inside, something shifted. Maybe it was Sawyer's constant warnings echoing in her mind, or Albert's angry voice that still rang in her ears. Maybe it was the silence of her empty apartment, or maybe it was the simple exhaustion of chasing love that never looked back. Whatever it was, Jane stood from her couch, walked to her desk, and began gathering the files she had kept. The contracts, the receipts, the evidence of everything she had done for Jasper. For the first time, she didn't see them as proof of love. She saw them as chains, and she was ready to break them. The next morning, Jasper arrived at Oakes's office, expecting his usual smile, expecting gratitude for the deals Jane had practically handed to him. Instead, Oakes's face was dark, his voice clipped. "We're done, Jasper. The contracts you paraded as your own were traced back. Turns out they weren't yours to claim. The board doesn't trust you anymore." Jasper's stomach dropped. "Oakes, listen, I can explain," but Oakes cut him off coldly. "No explanations. You built this with someone else's hands, and now you'll watch it fall apart without them." By the time Jasper left the office, his world was crumbling. The deals were gone, the contracts revoked, and his reputation stained. He drove straight to Jane's apartment, panic and anger boiling together. He pounded on her door until she opened it, her face calm, her eyes distant. "Jane," he said, almost breathless, "what did you do? Why would you sabotage me after everything She cut him off with a voice so steady it startled him. "After everything you what? Took? Used? Jasper, I didn't sabotage you. You did that all on your own. I just stopped protecting you." He stared at her, unable to speak, and in that silence, Jane finally found her strength. "Do you know what the saddest part is? I kept thinking if I gave more, if I loved harder, if I sacrificed everything, you would see me. But you never did. You never wanted me, Jasper. You wanted what I could give you." Tears welled in her eyes, but she didn't let them fall. "And I'm done." He reached for her hand, desperation clawing at him now, but she stepped back. For the first time, Jane wasn't chasing. She was walking away. Across town, Ariel sat with Lawrence, her heart shattered, but her spirit unbroken. She had confronted Jasper, heard his excuses, and seen the truth in his eyes. The man she loved had betrayed not just her, but the woman he had exploited in the shadows. "I thought love would be enough," she whispered to her brother. Lawrence placed a hand on her shoulder. "Love should never cost you your dignity, Ariel. Let him go before he takes more than he already has." And for once, she agreed. She deleted Jasper's number, blocked his calls, and chose herself over the hollow promises he had given. Jasper, caught between two women he had mishandled, realized too late that he had lost them both. His empire, built on Jane's sacrifices, had collapsed. His love, rooted in lies with Ariel, had crumbled. And now, for the first time, he stood alone. But the redemption didn't belong to him. It belonged to Jane. Weeks later, Sawyer visited her, surprised to find Jane smiling faintly, her apartment no longer filled with desperation, but with quiet resolve. "You look lighter," Sawyer said softly. Jane nodded. "Because I finally let go. I thought losing Jasper would break me, but holding on to him was what was breaking me all along." She had taken a new job, one that paid less but gave her peace. She had reconnected with Albert, who hugged her with relief when she told him she was done chasing someone else's dream. The wounds were still there, the sadness still lingered, but beneath it was something stronger: dignity, freedom, and the faint glow of hope. Redemption wasn't a grand victory. It wasn't Jasper begging for her or Ariel handing her forgiveness. It was simply walking away with her head held high, reclaiming the pieces of herself she had scattered at Jasper's feet. As for Jasper, he was left staring at the wreckage of what he had built, watching as both women walked away in opposite directions, leaving him with the only thing he had truly earned: emptiness. And though it hurt, though it nearly killed her, Jane knew in her heart that she was finally free.